Resume. At this time, Dr. Lester and Cal, will you lead us in the national anthem?
Our pleasure, sir. Sing with us.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light, rise so proudly clear at the twilight's last gleam, through frostbite and bright stars, through the perilous sky, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the ones were seen in air, came through the night, that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. With our invocation today, Bill Sheila.
Let us pray. Lord, thank you for this food. Thank you for the people that prepared it. And thank you for this club and the men and women who practice the motto of service above self. We ask in Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Terry Duffy, family of Rotary.
Good morning. I hope everybody's having a great Monday so far. This is be brief because we only have one birthday, Keith McAnulty on May the 3rd. And then we have two anniversaries. We have Jack and Shirley Collier on May 3rd. And I think we need to give them a round of applause. 61 years of marriage. We need to all get some more of Jack and Shirley on how to be married that long. 61 years is incredible. I guess the first thing you need to do is find a really, really strong woman. And if you know Shirley, that's definitely one, and I'm sure she keeps Jack in line, more or less. The other anniversary we're going to celebrate is Brooks Dewell and Laura on May the 6th. Hope you all have a great week. Thank you.
Chris Dixon, would you please come up to introduce guests visiting Rotarians today?
We're happy to welcome our guests and visiting Rotarians today. When I call your name, would you please stand and remain standing until all visitors are recognized? Sarah Beth Riker, and is a guest of Rick Riker. And are there any visitors that I have missed? No? Thank you for visiting with us today.
All right, at this time, Mr. Gormley, will you come up? You handing out money on the way?
It wasn't money. Good afternoon. This is the next chapter in getting to know your fellow Rotarians. Hopefully we can get people to recognize other Rotarians when they see them, and actually sometimes even know their name. Is there anyone in here that does not know William P. Bill Sheila? Anybody that doesn't know him? All right. Bill was born here in Dothan, Alabama, at Ruby Hospital at a very young age. He attended Dothan High School, graduated, went to Auburn. 1968, joined the Navy, was an enlisted man, an officer, and actually was the navigator on a 660-foot ship. And rumor has it that he actually brought it up the Chattahoochee River one time, but he couldn't turn it around, so he had to back up all the way to the Gulf. And the Navy sent him a letter a while ago asking if he could recall the last place he told the ship to go because they can't find him. Bill served in the military, one of probably the last Vietnam veterans in this club. And he went to work in his dad's advertising business when he left the Navy. And most recently, Bill has kind of semi-retired from the advertising business, still works out of his home. He and Gloria live together here in Dothan, and Bill loves to read, and he is my source for all good books. He's like a lending library. So if you see Bill, stand up, Bill. If you see Bill and don't know him, introduce yourself. If you do know him, introduce yourself because he might talk to y'all.
All right, this time, Mr. Jack Collier and Bruce McMill, will you please approach the front? I catch you mid-bite.
Yes. What did you do?
Presentation of a Paul Harris Fellow is the Rotary Foundation's way of expressing its appreciation for its substantial contribution to its humanitarian and educational programs. This honor is named for Rotary's founder, Paul Harris, who started Rotary in 1905. Bruce and Jack, it is because of gifts like yours that the Rotary Foundation is able to carry out an array of programs that achieve beneficial changes in our world. We congratulate you and we thank you for your commitment to the programs of the Rotary Foundation. Jack, you are receiving a Paul Harris +3, and Bruce, Paul Harris +7. At this time, I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join me in recognizing Bruce and Jack as multiple recipients. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over. Oh yeah, we didn't do Camp Basket. I missed that. Yeah, Sean gets it. Thanks.
All right, so we're up to 935 points. All right, the last three digits are 468. 468. How are we gonna run out? Do it, Wayne. Come on, do it. Yes.
Did you play for what? Did you like beat you in sales?
Ace of Diamonds.
Ace of Diamonds. Close.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
All right, now I'll turn it over to Mr. Session to introduce our guest today.
Lance and I were talking. I think we've been friends for about 25 years now, close to it. We first met. There was a group of us that were meeting to eat at local restaurants called Chew. And Chew stood for Christians Happily Eating Wherever. And we even had a website and everything where they send out notice, where we were going to be eating that day of the week and all that. But anyway, we were sitting there talking about, there were about 10 or 12 of us to start with. And I'm still pretty good friends with most of those men. And we were from churches all over town. Anyway, that's been a good thing. But Lance and I have known each other for a long time. And since 2012, Lance has been host of the Game Plan radio show, heard weekday mornings on Wolf Radio here in Dothan. He spent 23 years at the Dothan Eagle holding various positions, covered the University of Alabama sports for 8 years, covered the city of Dothan, state government as a news reporter for 13, and was editor for 2. Changed careers in 2019, accepted a position as a recreation minister and director of men's ministry at Ridgecrest Baptist Church here in Dothan. Recently, he started back writing for a publication again through an online platform called Substack, which can be accessed for free via an app or simple email subscription. And I really encourage y'all to check him out. He really writes some really good stuff. Lance was born and raised in Fayette, Alabama, graduated from the University of Alabama in 1992, has lived in Dothan since '96. He's been married to his wife Melanie for 17 years. He loves fried okra, sweet tea, and the Boston Red Sox. I give y'all Lance Griffin.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to be here. I've been on that side many times, and I've probably quoted many of you in the newspaper. If I was inaccurate, I will apologize for that right now, off the top. But I am honored, and I want to take a moment before I get to what I really want to talk about to honor you guys, because having been here and in these meetings as a reporter for many times, just gathering what you guys do in the community, you're always helping someone. You're either currently helping someone or you're planning to help someone, and that is a great legacy, and you're making a tangible difference in the community, something that you can really see. And I just want to honor you for that and what you do, and look forward to what you're going to continue to do. There's so many different things that I could talk about today, and I want to talk about something that's near and dear to me, having spent a total of 26 years in newspapers. And I want to talk about what I feel is the declining state of media. And when I talk, I'm going to talk primarily about the national media, because I believe my experience has been both from working with people and from being around people in our community, that at the local level, we've got people that just do the best they can with the resources they have and want to do the best job that they can. On the national level, I think it's all agenda driven. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to start with a couple of stories that illustrate this and then get to my overall point. I want to start back in April of 2021. There was a piece in 60 Minutes that came under fire about Ron DeSantis, and the whole point of the piece was that 60 Minutes was basically alleging that Ron DeSantis had chosen to use Publix as a vaccine distribution site because he got a $100,000 campaign contribution from the supermarket chain. And so the whole piece, 20 minutes long, was basically that this was a kickback for using Publix. DeSantis came out and he claimed that that was taken all out of context, and that he and others published the entire transcript of his interview, which showed that 60 Minutes selectively took portions of his comments and from others to craft the narrative that they wanted to get out to the people. And when you contrasted what 60 Minutes used from DeSantis and what he actually said, they were two totally different things. And I think it's almost impossible for the left and the right to agree on anything today, but even some left-leaning media critics indicated that the editing of DeSantis in that piece made the governor's decision sound far more sinister than it actually was. And in fact, some Democratic officials in Florida came to the defense of Ron DeSantis. I don't know if they do that today, but they did it a couple of years ago. In other words, DeSantis' reasoning for using Publix as a vaccination spot was a common sense, non-kickback reason, and that wasn't exactly what 60 Minutes put forward. In fact, quite the opposite. There wasn't really a story. That didn't stop 60 Minutes from moving forward, and they aren't the first ones to push a narrative that doesn't appear to line up with the facts. And they certainly won't be the last. In fact, the 60 Minutes piece is illustrative, I believe, of how many news stories are crafted today and how the news will be reported in the future. Unless you think that maybe I'm just going to hit on one side of the aisle here, I want to give you another example. I'm not omniscient, so I don't know everything that happened on election night in 2020. I can't tell you what went on in every precinct, and neither can anybody else. Could there have been shenanigans here and there? There certainly could have been. And some theories are better than others, which gets us back to what I want to talk about now. And if I step on your favorite conspiracy theory, I want to apologize in advance on that as well. A large number of people employed to get the word out to you and me, because again, we have very limited knowledge about what went on during election night, thought some of the theories about what went on and the guests that espoused it were crazy. But they reported to me and you in a completely different manner. We know this because the Dominion voting system filed a lawsuit against Fox News for $1.6 billion. It was recently settled for a little bit less than $800 million. And as part of the discovery phase of that lawsuit, Fox News had to release some text messages and emails that were sent during the course of their post-2020 election coverage. Most of the texts and emails concerned a lady named Sidney Powell. She was an attorney who injected herself into the post-election free-for-all, and at least for a while, she had the ear of President Trump in the White House. She was given ample time to push this theory that Dominion's voting machines were purposely changing votes from Trump to Biden, although almost no one actually believed this. Whether it was those in the White House who gave her a platform or those on Fox News who gave her a platform. And what we learned in the discovery process was that at the same time, Fox News was presenting this as a very valid story. They were texting each other about how crazy and loony she was and how it was not believable. They didn't tell me any of that. A move away from objectivity is being pushed in many journalism circles today as an acceptable form of reporting. I don't know why, but it is. And it's been widely panned by the right as being woke crazy, because it is. Yet here we have many at right-leaning Fox News stating the obvious, that her claims were not substantive, yet still giving it plenty of airtime. Why would Fox News do that? Why would they tell me and you one thing and talk amongst each other in a different way? Because they wanted you to keep watching. Chris Direwalt's a former political editor for Fox News, and he calls the current way of reporting news as a way to capture rage revenue. And Fox was losing rage revenue. In the 2020 election coverage, especially when Fox called Arizona for Joe Biden, people stopped watching Fox and they started watching Newsmax. And that alarmed people, especially in the upper echelons of Fox. Many personalities in Fox expressed distress over the future of the network, especially related to the soft playing of some of these election stories, and they worried that it was going to hurt the company. And so while they were talking about this theory being very loony, they did not want me and you to think that it was, because they were afraid you and I were going to change the channel over to Newsmax. So please understand what's happening. Most people at Fox News knew that what they were allowing on the air was nuts. But they were worried that saying so publicly would send more viewers away from the network. So they continue to air it while privately telling each other that it's all coming. Would you trust this news outlet? Those are two examples, one on the left and one on the right, of what concerns me about how news is reported now and how difficult it is for you and I to know what's true and what's not. So here's my thesis point for the state of media now, and I'm going to present a problem. I wish I could present a solution, but I think it's a problem. News is boring the overwhelming majority of the time. This is true, and it's the most essential thing to know when trying to figure out how ridiculously far off the rails the mainstream and alternative journalism has become. So don't think about this in ideological ways. Don't think about this as left and right. I think people blame it wrongly. The problem is that news is primarily boring. I did not say that it was not essential or important, but when accurately and fairly reported, it is rarely mind-blowing. Bombshells are extremely rare. The balance of our existence practically never exists in a news story. Many of you grew up in the 70s like I did. If you saw a special report on television, you remember the music would pop on and it would say special report. You probably saw that 3 times a year, maybe. If a plane went down or if the president was shot, that was the big breaking news. And now, bombshell report, breaking news, explosive documents revealed. You get this several times a day. As it turns out, what gets reported is typically neither breaking nor a bombshell. It gets you watching, it keeps you watching. The romanticism of news reporting has existed for a long time, but it probably went to the next level with the Washington Post Watergate reporting. This idea of disheveled reporters with a crumpled notepad and a pencil meeting in a dark parking garage with a CIA operative that drops this news drip by drip. It really gets the adrenaline going. I mean, you're meeting with anonymous shadowy figures, and the presidency is on the line, and this man's meeting with you every few weeks and keeps dropping a little bit here, a little bit there. It birthed this entire generation of wide-eyed, zealous college students who made a beeline for journalism, so they too could change the world. And then reality hit, because these wide-eyed kids that wound up wanting to change the world actually were sent to entry-level newspapers around the country and were sent to local city council meetings where button-down commissioners discussed weed ordinances. They were discussing sewer rates, community branding. They were sent to the local United Way to publicize the upcoming fundraiser. They were sent to the local library to talk about the summer reading program. They were sent to the school where the kid had the perfect ACT for a nice feature. All those stories are interesting, especially to the neighbors of the man with the high weeds in his yard, to those who don't want to pay the extra $4 a month for your sewer rate, the nonprofits who benefit from the United Way certainly appreciate the coverage. The parents and extended family of the ACT student are excited about the big future. But imagine what these wide-eyed reporters think when they run to journalism for clandestine meetings with shadowy figures and wind up at the library for summer reading. Those stories I just mentioned, to me, they are essential journalism. The United Way fundraiser, the kid with the perfect ACT score, and the sewer rate story. But would you pay money for it if another entity in town claimed to blow the lid off something 13 times a day? You know, this didn't matter much back in the day when newspapers had monopolies. They had monopolies on regional coverage, and television news was a 30-minute broadcast locally and a 30-minute broadcast nationally, once a day. That's all you got. I think that may be all we need. But 2 things happened that changed everything. First came cable television, 24-hour news. And I hate to state the obvious, but you cannot retain viewers for long with boring news. No matter how fairly or accurately it is reported, you need to give the viewer something that keeps their interest, even if you have to boost the news. Then came the internet. Now, newspapers weren't the only voice in town, of course. If you had something to say from the comfort of your own living room, you could get that out to people. Blogging became a big thing, and the most successful bloggers were the ones who yelled the loudest. Their blogs didn't have to be backed up with any real substance. It just needed to have some sizzle. And over the span of just a few years, the occurrence of bombshell news went from once every few months to several times. Keep in mind, the news itself hasn't changed, but the manner in which it is reported has changed drastically. This was illustrated perfectly in 2018. The Washington Post sent a reporter here to do a story on the local Jewish synagogue's effort to reseat the synagogue by offering cash payments to families who moved here and joined the synagogue. Post reporter came down here and talked to a handful of families about their experiences here, and those families offered glowing reflections of their time in Dothan, except one. One couple recounted a few innocuous instances that at best rose to the level of residents' ignorance about Jewish faith and customs, but what was produced? A 2,641 word skewering of Dothan as anti-Semitic. How many of you remember that story? Most of you. Which headline would you most likely click if you were just a member of the general public? Predominantly Christian Southern Alabama town reaches out to Jewish community looking to grow, which on balance is what the reporter gathered from the reporting here. Or a millionaire paid Jews to move to a small Alabama town. Now a couple struggle with their choice. That story generated more than 3,600 comments. You want another example? Here's a tweet shared by the news site Vox in 2016 that had this menacing headline. More than half of children in one Alabama county test positive for lead poisoning. That's a shock. And beneath the tweet is a bar chart that indicates Houston County has a 58.3% rate for lead poisoning cases in children. 58%. At the time, Houston County had about 23,500 people that were children aged. So the tweet leads you to believe that Houston County had 12,000 kids with lead poisoning. Now that's patently false. How many people were in the data set that Vox used for their tweet? 12. Out of those 12, how many tested positive? 7. Local officials that I talked to believe the positive test came predominantly from one family whose home had frozen pipes. So the lead poisoning rate for Houston County was not 58.3%, it was 0.03%. And it had nothing to do with the quality of the drinking water, which was the thing of the story. At the time, Vox had about 331,000 Twitter followers. The tweet was retweeted 94 times. I issued an explainer a couple of days later from my Dothan Eagle Twitter account, which went out to about 1,500 followers. It was retweeted twice. No one wants to read the following stories, even though they accurately reflect the sentiment and truthfulness of the moment. New Jewish families welcome to South Alabama town. South Alabama County has clean drinking water. Television and alternative media soon learn that the louder you yell and the more you scare the viewer or the reader, the more people viewed your programming or clicked on your site. And guess what? The more people that watched you or clicked on your site, the more money you make. Some of the techniques that are used in news reporting, left or right today, are the same ones used by casinos to entice repeat gamblers and gaming companies to keep gamers engaged with their games on. And that's how the rails came off the news. The ability to report news in a matter-of-fact manner died, or at least suffered a mortal wound that has been bleeding for years and will soon lead to its complete death. All of a sudden, your sewer rates aren't increasing because the cost of maintaining the system has risen over time. Your sewer rates are increasing to line the pockets of shady contractors. Which of the below headlines would you click? Unemployment rises 0.2% in line with cyclical pattern over time. Or would you most likely click spike? Unemployment rises as ex-party policies begin to erode citizens' ability to make a living. We're inherently drawn to the controversial or the sensational. It's why we slow down in Crater Necks to look at traffic accidents on the side of the road. It's why warning offensive lyrics labels that were placed on albums back in the day increased the album sales. And it's why more people read sensationalized than accurately reported news. And the media, both mainstream and alternative, has found a formula to make tons of money. Scare readers, make sure they believe you can't do without information they send you because they may take away your liberties. This next story. Make sure that you report no news that challenges the worldview of those most likely to read or watch you and demonize the other side. Most of what is reported as monumental or world-altering news. It's pretty much normal stuff that will not make money. And that's why I began asking you to put aside ideology. Whatever side you're on reports the news in this manner, just like the other side. What's the answer? That's the difficult question. It's hard to take the money out of news once it has become so big. I know of no other way. What do I read? I read a little bit of everything, with emphasis on the word little. This is my own personal thought, but I trust the Wall Street Journal. That doesn't mean I take everything reported there as gospel. I understand that it leans right, but it's not afraid to take conservative paths from time to time. I do not trust the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox News, Newsmax, or OAN. I believe those entities do sometimes report truthful and worthwhile stories from time to time, but I believe too many who work there see the world through only one lens and can't report outside of it, regardless of where the story leads. If you watch or read any of these predominantly, you will get a skewed view of the world. You know, things were far from perfect back in the old days. Some stuff back when newspapers had monopolies that needed to be reported didn't get reported. I understand all of that. Reporters still allowed their ideology to get in the way. But where we are now is not where we need to be. And that is the problem I'm offering. I wish I could offer a solution as well, but it's near and dear to my heart because it's something that I worked in for 26 years. And I hate to see where it is now compared to where it was then. And I wanted to just share my thoughts with you on that. And hopefully at least get a conversation started. And maybe at least when you watch the news tonight, you may watch it a little bit differently than you watched the night before. So I thank you for your time.
Yeah, first of all, it sounds to me like that since you do not trust the ones you named, there may be others. I'm curious to know, who do you trust? Which ones?
Outside of the Wall Street Journal, I read the Wall Street Journal online, and I am reading thinking that they are trying to tell me the truth. I know that I may not be getting the entire truth, but based on their body of reporting, I believe that they're trying to give me an accurate view of what is going on. The other ones that I mentioned, I think they are trying to get me to go in a certain direction, and they're leaving the stuff out that will cause me to go in the direction they don't want me. Okay. Yes, sir.
I think it's interesting to note that today's 24-hour breaking news cycles were trained by the newspapers. You look back at old films in the 20s and 30s, if something happened after the regular delivery times of the paper, they would print an extra.
That's right.
Have a young fellow from the side of the road, got an extra, read all about it. I think that's where we are today with the 24-hour news cycle.
I think that's a good observation. I think it's because it is so voluminous now, everything is an extra, read all about it. We had something in the newspaper business called second coming type, which meant there's a headline so big, we're only reserving it for the second coming. That's the only way we would trot out that big of a headline. And my point in some of what I spoke to you today about is that's every day. It's every single day. There is something that is happening, they tell you, that will completely make the world end if you don't pay attention to what they're reporting. And I'm not saying that some of that's not important. I'm just saying it needs to be put in its proper perspective, but they have to make everything seem like second coming tide to keep you watching and to make the maximum amount of profit. Yes, sir.
One thing I'm seeing, and get your opinion on this, like, my news feed on my platforms are for, right wing, red meat, my left wing buddy Bob Rudder. You don't know what the heck I'm talking about when we converse, so you're only seeing what you've been feeding into Google. I mean, I think that's controlling the news more than anything.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point and what the algorithm has done to society. Because it knows what you're consuming, and once it knows what you're consuming, it's gonna shove that to you in your feeds, and you're not gonna see anything else. And when you try to have a conversation with somebody whose feed may look completely different, you can't even talk to each other
I
anymore.
don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you can't even have this platform of which to begin your conversation, much less get to the point where you can actually have a substantive one. So that's a very good point. Yes, sir.
Few years ago, there were people like, Walter Cronkite, Edward Murrow, that seem to have the reputation of being believable. Who do you put in that category today?
I don't think we have a Walter Cronkite today. And even in reading some of the stuff about Walter Cronkite, I think even a little bit of what he said, he may not have actually believed, but he was as close as you get, more than likely. If there's a talking head on television that I think I believe, I'm gonna throw Ben Shapiro out there, but I'm squinting when I say that because, I know he's in the business of making money and he makes an awful lot of it. And I know he tries to entertain you along the way. But of those in that ilk, I probably would lean more to him. Or somebody else, I think. Yes, sir.
Where could a possible solution begin? Is it even possible to think schools or communication can change, or we just kind of hope our subject local reporting?
I wish I had a good answer to that because every model that comes out there about what news coverage is going to look like next always includes money. There's even a model out there that talks about news coverage going nonprofit. But even at that, there is some entity over at the top of that nonprofit organization that is over the entity. That may be as good as we can get if we go nonprofit, but I don't see another viable platform out there because the consumer just won't watch evenly reported news. They just won't do it. Any attempt that's ever been made for it, everybody either will go CNN or Fox. And so I don't have a good answer for that. Right there.
I know there's been a trend of local news and newspapers getting bought up by corporations. Can you talk a little bit about the consequences of that and where you see that going?
Yeah, and that's our story here in Dothan. I went through 4 ownerships, I believe, when I was there. And every time we were bought, there was just a little bit more control from the top that got away from our newsroom. The last company that bought us took control of our Facebook and our Twitter and all that. So pretty much everything you saw from the Dothan Eagle on Facebook and Twitter was what they were putting out from the corporate headquarters. I know because I got all the complaints about what was on our Facebook page because most people did not agree with what was being put out there. So most of the concentration of ownership has resulted in a cookie cutter mentality to news coverage. And it would be very easy for someone way off somewhere to say, well, this is what our newspaper in Pennsylvania uses, so let's just use it in Dothan. It doesn't add up. And I think you guys have experienced that. Go ahead, Rich.
I listen, or I read rather, something online I get from 1440news.com. What do you think of that organization?
I've clicked on that and explored it a little bit. I haven't gone much beyond that. I think any new attempt is worth looking into to see, and I just haven't explored it enough to form a strong opinion one way or the other. I think they're trying, just in the little bit that I've seen. I mean, I think they probably still have a slant to their coverage, but it may not be as bad as some that we've seen. So it's something I plan on looking into. 1440 is the name of that.
Seems like most of the papers that I see, their main source of news comes from the Associated Press.
Mhm.
How do you place them in this accuracy range?
Probably the source of my greatest frustration in the 2.5 years I was the editor. We had, I think, an Associated Press for many years that tried to do a really good job. I knew most of the people there, and I think maybe they had some sort of ideology. I think we all do to a certain extent. But I think they really tried to get what was accurate out there. I did not see that at all in the Associated Press 2.5 years I was there. And I voiced that frustration to some of our corporate guys that were above me, and their solution was, well, we have a Washington Post syndicate feature feed that we can send you. No, I don't think that's what we're looking for either. So I've been greatly frustrated with the AP. And you're right, as the number of employees locally have dwindled down, you basically get the Associated Press, and I don't think they're as bigger as they used to be. David?
What do you think about the 1819 news organization here in Alabama?
That's another one, just like 1440, I've only looked into just a little bit. I know what they're trying to do. And again, I'm all for anybody trying to give it a go and see if they can try to cover something in an unbiased way. I just haven't seen enough of them yet. They're a baby. So that's kind of what I'm looking for with 1442, to see if somebody I can look at it and go, you know what, I don't always agree with them, but they're really doing a good job in giving me what I need, which is accuracy. Yes, sir.
As far as holding the media accountable to running these crazy stories, how effective do you think the addition of community notes on Twitter will be to hold their feet to the fire?
I pay attention to them. I don't know if you've noticed that, if any of you that use Twitter, but if there's something crazy that gets tweeted out that seems way out there, it allows the public to be able to hold a little bit of accountability there by attaching something to that tweet and saying, okay, they left out a lot of information. Here's more to it. Now I pay attention to it. So hopefully that will balance things out to a certain extent. I think what Elon Musk is trying to do with Twitter, I think, is better than what it was before. Just a lot of growing pains and flipping that thing over. I'll be interested in looking to see what it looks like in 6 to 8 months when he's had more of an opportunity to do something. I like that. Good thing. I love these questions. I appreciate it. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Would be outraged by Russia taking that journalist, locking him up.
I don't know. I don't know if he may actually be a spy. I don't know. There's a Wall Street Journal reporter, Gerskovich, who was taken into custody over in Russia. I would like to give the Wall Street Journal the benefit of the doubt and say Russia's probably just being Russia. So I would certainly hope this gets released soon and is back to his family. Yeah,
You gotta ask the sports question.
please.
All right, give us your rundown on what we should expect out of Tuscaloosa, especially the quarterback.
On my show, after watching the 8-day game, I said my concern for the quarterbacks was equated to a 3-alarm fire. I hadn't seen the quarterbacks look that bad. And the 8-day, always things look worse than they actually are because you split the rosters, but I just saw a bunch of bad mechanics from those quarterbacks that I did not expect to see. And I'm not crazy about the guy they brought in, but my guess is because the new offensive coordinator worked with him for a couple of years, he told Nick Saban that, hey, this guy's better than anybody we got right now, so let's bring him in. And if he wins the job, he wins the job. And Alabama recruited him in the recruiting process too, so I'm sure Saban's a little bit familiar with him too. But I have great concerns about the quarterback situation next year. I think, the true freshman Dylan Lonergan, I think he can be really good in a couple of years. Probably not ready yet, and they've got a guy from in named William Seen that's supposed to be really good too. So I think they'll be in good shape. I'm just not sure about next year. Yeah.
How much money did Young get as being a number one pick?
35 million, does that sound right? I think it was somewhere in the 34, $35 million range. Which is less than quarterbacks used to get going number one overall. They've actually scaled that down a little bit.
Is that more than he got while he's?
That may be closer than we like to think. Anything else? You've been very gracious with your time. I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you, Lance, for speaking to us today, and great program. I want to thank everybody who helped with today's program. Brad Parrish, Lynn Payton, Mr. Shealy, Chris Dixon, and Sean. Also, want to say thanks for coming, Sarah Beth. I hear you're about to go off to camp, so good luck and have fun with the children this summer. With that, if you will, please stand so we can recite the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do. Have a great week.